The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 5 Dragon and Judge. Chapter 12.
Today we begin a new group of judgments,
Tansifi said as Jack settled into his seat of justice.
These will involve injuries caused by one of the many against another.
I see, Jack said, hiding a grimace. Just when he'd gotten used to sorting out land and water disputes, too. Let's have the first case. Tansifi motioned, and two Golvins from the usual group of onlookers stepped forward.
872 among many, and 561 not among many,
She identified them.
2½ seasons ago, Istu struck Fisiona's right arm and severely injured it. Fisiona claims it was deliberate. Istu claims it was an accident.
Jack gestured at Fisiona. Let me see it. The Golvin lifted his arm. Move it around, Jack instructed. Show me how it was damaged.
It was harmed here,
Fisiona said, pointing to the forearm. Move it around, Jack repeated. The other did so. As far as Jack could tell, it had the full range of motion he'd seen in other Golvins. It looks all right to me, he said.
But it was injured,
Fisiona said.
I deserve compensation for the pain, and my work suffered as well.
How long were you unable to work? Jack asked. Fisiona gave Tansifi a sideways glance.
I was never completely unable to work,
he hedged.
But it was difficult and most painful.
For how long? Another sideways glance. Over a month. But not even close to 2 months, Jack suspected, or the Golvin would have fudged the number that direction. It was a game Jack knew well, having often played it himself against Uncle Virgil. All right, then, let's try this, he suggested. Who else witnessed the incident? Fisiona was starting to look like he was regretting having given up part of his morning for this.
No one,
he admitted. Jack shifted his attention to Istu. And you claim it was an accident?
The shovel was muddy and slipped from my hand,
Istu said,
and I offered to help with his work while he needed it. I am a craftsman, Fisiona said stiffly, a worker of wooden goods. A mere farmer does not have the skill to truly assist me.
Nevertheless, he did offer, Jack said. More importantly, there were no witnesses and appears to be no permanent damage, and therefore dismissing the case and the charges. Fisiona threw a look at Easttooth, then another at Thonsifi, then looked back at Jack. Jack waited a moment, but if the other had been planning to complain about the verdict, he apparently thought better of it. The case is dismissed, Jack said again. You may both return to your work. The two Golvins bowed their heads in brief salute, then turned and headed off across the great hall. Next? Jack asked. Thonsifi gestured two more Golvins forward, one of them walking with a definite limp. Unlike the last case, this one was apparently fresh.
6-7 not among many, and 2 not 1-2 among many, she said. 1 month ago, 2-1 not 2 struck Cincy with a weeding tool and caused serious damage to his right leg. He was on my land,
2-1 not 2 began.
Silence,
Thonsifi snapped. You'll get your turn to speak, Jack promised. Any witnesses this time?
There were 2,
Thonsifi said, motioning two more Golvins forward.
4-4-3 among many isn't upright,
she added, pointing to one of them. Jack waved the latter forward another few steps. Tell me what happened, he invited.
Sisini was indeed on Tiwanatu's land, Fofoth said. He was speaking to Tiwanatu.
About what?
I was too far away to hear the words,
Fofoth said.
I could hear that both voices were becoming angry.
Then what happened?
Tiwanatu ordered Sisini from his land,
Fofoth said.
I could tell that from his hand movements. Sisini stepped onto the irrigation canal and continued talking. Tiwanatu moved to the edge of his land closest to Sisini and said something. Sisini said something else, and that was when Tiwanatu struck him.
Thank you. Jack motioned him back and gestured to Tiwanatu. What was the argument about?
He was talking about my sister,
the other said, his eyes darkening with the memory.
He was being highly insulting.
Jack looked at Sisini. Were you? Sisini drew himself up to his full height.
I spoke truth,
he said in a lofty tone.
One should not be attacked merely for speaking truth.
I agree, Jack said. On the other hand, he'd seen enough fights among the Uncle Virgil's old acquaintances to know that tone and attitude can turn what was technically a truthful statement into something with lots of very sharp edges. Why didn't you leave Tiwanatu's land when he ordered you to?
I did leave,
Sisini countered, to stand in his irrigation canal.
The canal is not his,
Sisini said stiffly.
None of this is relevant. You will not speak that way,
Tansifi began, and broke off, her head tilted to the side, her face turned toward the far end of the great hall. What is it? Jack said, following her gaze. Across the way, 50 or 20 Golvins were converging on the pillar containing Jack's apartment. Converging very rapidly. And each of the Golvins was carrying a compact bow with a small quiver of arrows slung over his vest. What is it? Jack demanded again, his heart suddenly pounding. Had someone spotted Dracos? What's going on?
I will find out,
Tansifi said. She said something in the Golvan language to one of Jack's guards. He nodded and headed across the great hall at a fast trot.
Sifisini will find out.
She gestured at Sisini and Tiwanatu.
In the meantime...
Of course, Jack said, forcing his mind back to the case as he watched the unfolding drama out of the corner of his eye. The running Golvins had reached the base of the pillar now, and 5 of them handed their weapons to others and began climbing the stone. We clearly and definitely have a willful act here. And then, to his relief, the climbing Golvins passed his apartment without a second glance and kept going. Whatever was happening, it apparently didn't involve Dracos. A willful act which resulted in clear injury, he went on, bringing his full attention back to the Golvins standing in front of him. However, I also find there have been to a certain amount of provocation in the incident. I therefore rule that Tiwanatu will assist Sisini in his work until Sisini's leg is sufficiently healed for him to resume his duties by himself.
This is outrageous, Sisini protested. He has deliberately injured me. I deserve something more lasting than merely a few months of assistance.
You mean like some of his land? Jack suggested mildly. Sisini brought his chin up.
Exactly.
Which currently borders yours, I presume. Sisini glared at Tiwanatu.
And the leaves from which fall onto my land.
Sorry, but that's not the case at hand, Jack told him. So at its root, the whole thing had been little more than an attempted land grab disguised as a cry for justice. Sisini had probably engineered the whole incident, in fact, attack and all. Land disputes will be taken up at another time if you'd care to file a complaint. In the meantime, I rule that for every hour you work your land, Tiwanatu will work for a quarter hour. Cassini's mouth dropped open.
A mere quarter hour,
he all but yelped.
That is an insult. I am a level 6 of the many.
In that case, perhaps we should make it a sixth of an hour instead of a quarter hour, Jack cut him off. Or perhaps even less? Cassini's facial wrinkles were working overtime as his emotions surged like a spring flood. Jack waited patiently, and after a long moment, the wrinkles faded away.
I will accept the judgment,
he muttered. Good, Jack said. You may both return to your work. Drawing himself up, clearly trying to gather together as much dignity as he could, Cassini turned and stalked away, his limp rather ruining the effect. Tuanatu bowed his head briefly to Jack, then followed.
A question, Drupa Jack,
Tansifi said quietly from beside him.
You say Tuanatu will assist until Cassini's leg is sufficiently healed. How will we know when that will be?
Was Cassini at the dinner party a few days ago that honored my arrival? Jack asked her.
He was.
When did he leave? Don Sifi's lips worked with thought.
I believe at the 13th hour.
Barely an hour after the party had begun, and a full 3 hours before it finally closed down. His leg was probably hurting him, Jack said.
Yes, now that I think, I remember him saying exactly that,
Don Sifi confirmed. I presume you have other dinners and festivals and such on a regular basis?
At least once a month,
Don Sifi said.
More often if there are special events.
Good, Jack said. Then you keep your eye on him. The first time he lasts at least 3 hours into one of these festivals, that's when his leg is sufficiently healed. For a moment, Tansifi looked puzzled. Then her expression cleared.
I understand, Drupa Jack. You are indeed wise beyond your seasons.
Let's just say I know how people think, Jack said. Next case. Wait a minute, he interrupted himself. Across the great hall, the guard Tansifi had sent out had reappeared and was coming toward them. Let's hear what Sificini's found out. The guard reached Tansifi and conversed with her for a minute in their own language. Whatever was being said, Jack noticed uneasily, it was causing quite a stir among the rest of the waiting Golvins.
It was the prisoner,
Tansifi said, turning back to Jack.
But it is all right. He has not escaped.
What prisoner is this? Jack asked, frowning.
A loud noise alerted some of the young mothers who were resting in their quarters,
Tansifi continued.
The noise was investigated, and it has been learned that the prisoner was trying to escape.
What prisoner? Jack repeated. Who is he? Tansifi's face darkened.
He is a murderer, Drupa Jack, she said in a low voice. He caused the deaths of 4 of the many.
When? Jack asked. Could this prisoner be the human Dracos had smelled the night before? What exactly happened?
It is no concern of yours, Drupa Jack, Tansifi said. The decision on his punishment has already been made.
Maybe I'd like to rehear it, Jack said.
It is no concern of yours,
Tansifi repeated.
May I bring the next case?
Jack glowered across at his pillar, and the Golvins still standing guard around its base. In other words, foreigner, back off and butt out? Fine. Jack would back off. For now. But the One would hear about this, and Jack would find out what was going on. In the meantime, there was work to do. Very well, he said to Tansifi. Bring it on. With questions about the mysterious prisoner swirling through his mind, he called an early lunch break. To his relief, and as Dracos had predicted, no one raised any objection to his decision to return to his apartment for a few minutes before rejoining the others for the midday meal. Dracos was nowhere to be seen as he pushed aside the fringe and entered the apartment. "Dracos," he called softly as he walked into the bedroom.
"Here!"
the Kadaz said, lifting his head into view from the far side of the bed. "Catching a little nap, are we?" Jack asked, circling around the foot of the bed. "Wait till you hear—" "Oh, man!" He broke off as he came within sight of the black blood spread across the other's scales.
"I had to descend the shaft rather quickly,"
Dracos explained, getting gingerly to his feet.
"It looked worse before."
"I'll just bet it did," Jack said, heading into the bathroom and grabbing one of the washcloths. "Get in here." A few careful minutes later, he'd wiped off most of the caked blood. "At least you look better now," he said as he rinsed out the cloth. "What's the rest of the damage?"
"It's not too bad,"
Dracos assured him.
"A few bruised muscles and strained joints and lightly burned paws. A day or two of rest against your skin, and I should be back to full health."
"I hope so," Jack said, laying out the cloth to dry and heading for the galley, "because something new has just come up." He related what little he knew about the prisoner as he got the Kadaz some meat and water. "At least now I know what the noise was that tipped you off," he concluded. "You falling down the shaft."
"Descending the shaft rather quickly,"
Dracos corrected as he wolfed down the meal.
"though I'm not sure whether to be pleased or regretful for my unplanned part in this incident."
"You don't think this guy's really a murderer?"
"I don't know,"
Dracos said.
"but we've both seen the Golden ability to shape and color the truth, to say what they wish others to hear."
"Like in just about every case I've heard in the past 6 days," Jack said wryly. "Makes your ears itch after a while."
"In that they are not so different from other people's,"
Dracos pointed out.
"but it means we must be careful not to come into any conclusions until we know all the facts. I trust you'll be speaking to the one about that."
"First chance I get," Jack said, clearing away the remains of the Kadaz meal. "Meanwhile, I need to get back. Hop aboard and let's go." The chance arrived sooner than Jack had expected. When he returned to the Great Hall, he found the one waiting for him.
"Good midday to you,"
said one among many. "Good midday to you, one among many," Jack greeted him in return. "This is a fortunate meeting."
"Perhaps not so fortunate,"
the one warned.
"Don Sifi tells me you have asked for information on our prisoner."
"That's right," Jack said. "I was told he killed 4 of your people."
"Yes,"
the one said, his voice darkening.
"4 of the many, none of whom was threatening him in any way."
He eyed Jack.
"Nor did they offer any provocation to him,"
he added pointedly. So Thonsifi had also given him a rundown on the morning's decisions. "I'd still like to hear all the facts," he told the one. "I may decide that a rehearing of his case would be—"
"There will be no rehearing,"
the one snapped. Jack took an involuntary step backward. The sudden blaze of fury was something he hadn't seen in these people before. "I understand your anger," he said, keeping his voice calm, "but there may be circumstances—"
"The circumstances are that he killed 4 of the many, that he was found responsible for those deaths, and that he will remain a prisoner until his death."
"I understand," Jack said, "but as a Judge Paladin, it's both my right and my duty to investigate these matters."
"And you have done so,"
the one said.
"Your investigation is now ended."
For a long moment, he and Jack gazed at each other. "Very well," Jack said. With your permission, I have yet to eat my midday meal.
Then eat and be filled,
the one said. His surge of anger was gone, his voice that of the calm leader again.
More arguments and claims await you this afternoon.
With a nod, he brushed past Jack and headed for the exit. And with that, apparently, the conversation was over. But that didn't mean the subject was closed, Jack promised himself. Not by a long shot.